So what is SEO? So there's a lot of acronyms in the technology world. So SEO is search engine optimization. So essentially it is improving the way search engines find and index and deliver your website when people are searching for it. So it improves visibility, it improves the content delivery, and ways that Google looks for trustworthy, relevant, and authoritative content. So SEO has a number of factors in the role of digital marketing. If anyone was on board our digital marketing webinar a couple of weeks ago, we talked about all of the different elements of a digital marketing strategy. SEO is important because you're able to take analytics and data that you've gleaned from all of your other channels to find ways to deliver the most relevant content to your target audience. So some things to think about with SEO. First of all, as we just said, you optimize your website and your content to rank higher. Organic results are the free results that you see. And for the most part, we're going to be talking about Google here since it's the 800-pound gorilla. We'll talk about some of the other search engines in a little bit, but right now we'll pretty much look at what Google and Bing are doing. So when you go and search, you'll always see the paid ads, you'll see some products, you'll see Google business listings, but the organic results are the free results. You can get lucky in some cases if you have a niche industry, one without a lot of competition. You can have success in SEO to get the elusive page one. But for the most part, it really requires a strategy and a lot of data to help you reduce, wash, rinse, repeat. You want to refine what you're doing. There is a cost to SEO. It can be broken down in a number of different ways, but there is an investment required in it, and there is time that is required to be invested in it. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight. So we'll start out by talking about the search engines. So as I said, for the most part today, we're going to be talking about the top three, Google, Bing, and Yahoo. YouTube is actually number two, being owned by Google. It's the second largest search engine, and Bing and Yahoo are both owned by Bing, which is Microsoft's product. Then you've got different ones from around the world, Yandex in Russia, Baidu in China, and then one of our favorites, DuckDuckGo. And one of the advantages of DuckDuckGo is it is a more private search engine. It doesn't store data. You might get better unbiased search results with it. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. But really, there's about 500 or more search engines worldwide. And if you think about it, technically Twitter is a search engine. It's a very effective one too. Of course, you've got the dark web search engines, but there are some that are in particular niches. So for example, Wolfram Alpha is one that focuses on some of the more technical and mathematical equations. There are search engines for open, royalty-free, open source software, royalty-free music. There's just a plethora of them. But for the most part, as I said, we're going to stick with Google, Bing, and Yahoo. So how do they work? That's the mystery of there, and very few people on the outside of Google and Bing can really get insight into the algorithm. I think it's interesting that it came from its genesis is the University of Maryland. Of course, Sergey Brin attended University of Maryland. He's one of the co-founders of Google, along with Larry Page. So we have some local connections to it. But it's all based on that algorithm that crawls the internet, indexes content, and delivers it based on search queries. It is a complex formula. I can't imagine what this thing must look like. But it's also updated very frequently. Panda is the name of one of the most popular algorithms that Google employed, I think, starting in 2011. So they usually name them. There's Panda, there's Hummingbird, there's Fred. Now I think it's just Core, but they're updated frequently throughout the year to improve search quality, the experience, and even to reduce spam and manipulative links. So a spider or a bot is what these algorithms use to crawl the web pages and to index it for search. So what a crawler sees is different than what we see when we look at a website. This is an actual screenshot of a spider crawl. It's just like a newspaper. You've got a big headline, you've got subheaders, you've got maybe a little excerpt there or a teaser. And it's kind of the way you see it is kind of the way it interprets it. The larger text or the H1 tags, that's the title, that's the most important. The small subheading there, all of these things kind of lead in. So this would be a good optimized page for what is search engine optimization. The search phrase repeats itself throughout the article, and the title, the summary, and the excerpts all contain that phrase. So there are a lot of factors in search results. So this is just a search for guitars. So you'll see at the very top, there's sponsored ads. And then below that, there's some sponsored text ads. Really above the, I'm not sure if you guys can see my pointer or not, but at the very top, there's different categories. That's something that's broken down by structured data, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But basically, you have your paid, which is at the top and can be at the side, organic below there. What affects those search results are certainly your website technical performance, the page speed. Is it secure? Is it structured correctly? Is the search phrase relevant to the content on your page? We'll talk about page rank and domain authority, which is essentially a score that your website gets for grading all of those different factors. It's not really named for a web page. It's named for Larry Page, one of the co-founders of Google that created the algorithm. So it's a numerical value. For example, a Facebook might be 100. A brand new website might be a 1. And it can take a lot of time to get from 1 to 100, and a lot of visits, a lot of traffic, and a lot of other factors. So for the most part, many small business websites tend to score in the 10 to 30 range, just to give you a comparison. The other thing is your geography. Geolocation plays an important role. If you ever noticed, if you're in Google and you're searching for something, you're going to see results that are based on your location, where you are. If you Google guitars or you Google landscapers, for example, you're going to see local landscapers. You may not see listings across the country. So your geolocation is important. The other piece of that is what I call the user or browser bias. Search browser, well, your internet browser stores cached files of the websites that you visit. Search engines can store your search queries and your search history. And so those results can be delivered with a bias to things that you might have looked for. I tell people when we do internet ads, don't Google your own business and not click on the link, because then Google is going to see that that's not relevant to you. So they're going to suggest other web pages. So people will say, well, I did Google it and I didn't see my listing. How come it's not there? And that could be why, among other reasons. So there is a user and a browser bias. So if you want a truly agnostic, independent view, you might open it in a private window or use DuckDuckGo to do a search, or even use a VPN to mask your geolocation. So those are all different things that can affect what you see in search. It's important to know that two people can be literally in the same office at the same time, search for the same thing, and get different results based on that user and browser bias. So let's talk a little bit about SEO strategies. It's a plan. It's just like everything else. It's not something that you can kind of go in and tweak a few things. It's an ongoing process, and it starts with research. So I tell everyone, search your own site, first of all. If you go to Google and you go to the search box and you type in site:/www.yoururl.com, Google will give you a listing of all of the pages on your website that have been indexed. So it's a good way, first of all, to find out what's out there. There may be pages that you don't want to be viewed by the public. So it'll give you a chance to go through and look and see what you want to get out of search, for one thing. But then it'll also give you an insight as to how your titles are appearing, how your headings are appearing, and some of those excerpts to make sure that it's relevant. There are also SEO audits. There are a lot of platforms that provide them. There are some little extensions you can add to your browser, for example, but they'll help identify some of the technical issues with your website. So again, it's like a car. If it's not running properly, if it's not running smoothly, you're not going to get the best performance out of it. So if your website, the structure is a little wonky, or it's really slow, or let's say there's a lot of broken links and you get to these dreaded error 404 pages, you need to find those things so they can be fixed, because you can get penalized on your search results. Another tool to use is Google and Bing Search Consoles. Those are really excellent free tools. Anybody can sign up for it. It gives you a little code, a little script that you can add to your website. And then you can log in there and you can look and see, it'll build the data over time, but you can look and see where your search queries are. It'll give you a list of how many times someone searched for a particular phrase, how many times someone clicked on your website, and then how many total searches there were. So if your primary business, Blue Guitars, and you can look at your queries in Search Console, and you can see there were 10,000 searches for Blue Guitars, and you had one click because you ranked 75, then that gives you insight as to, well, I need to focus some SEO and improve that keyword so it performs better. Certainly another factor is mobile friendliness. Now we're seeing upwards of 70% of traffic is coming from mobile. So it's important to make sure that your website renders properly on all devices. And, you know, again, website age has something to do with that too. So just think about 5-6 years ago, I think the iPhone 7 was still out, and now we're at 13 or 14. So you can see how the technology has improved, particularly screen resolution has improved. And with broadband internet speeding up for everybody, cellular connections, page speed is important. Another thing to start with is, what are your keywords? Think about what your primary keywords are for your business. You may be able to find them in Search Console, but then go to something like a Google Keyword Planner, which is a tool that's usually connected with the AdWords platform. But that gives you a chance to type in a keyword. It'll give you other suggestions. And it's even beyond just keywords now. It's grew from keywords to search phrases. Now it's voice recognition, because people are asking Siri and Alexa and all these other AI-driven platforms questions. So it's another way that Google's algorithm has adapted to be able to be intuitive to voice and paragraph questions. So once you have that data, what do you do? Where do you start? Well, the first thing to do is to start with what you've already got. Most of us have websites that have archives and libraries of content that we've built up over the years. So that's still got value. That's already had some indexing. So if it's not performing, let's start making sure that that content is optimized, our website framework is optimized, and build from there. So I talked about trustworthy, authoritative, and relevant content a little while ago. Well, now it's called EAT. It's called expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. It's just like BBB. Start with trust. Make sure your content starts with trust. So you want to make sure that Google wants to make sure that your content isn't just a spam link farm, or worse yet, it's got malware. So it wants to make sure if you're selling Blue Guitars, that your content is all about Blue Guitars. It's going to look at the technical elements. Like I said to you a little bit ago, page speed, mobile, SSL is so important, because that is the HTTPS in the URL. That is what encrypts your connection from your computer to the internet. And it just keeps out the snoopers and making sure that that data gets to you securely. Meta tags and descriptions. If you think back to the picture of what the crawler sees, those tags, the header tags, the the H1s, the H2s. You want to make sure that the most important keyword is in your most important tag. You want to make sure that your descriptions or your excerpts are accurate so that when you see these in search, that little paragraph that appears below there is relevant to the content. We'll also talk about image optimizations. And these are things that your marketing team might be able to do, your developer might be able to do, you might be able to do yourself. Certainly WordPress being a very popular web platform, content management system, there are plugins that can do a lot of this for you. So if you've got a WordPress website, something that you work with yourself, you can look for plugins like Yoast or all-in-one SEO, also Smart Crawl. So there's a lot of different plugins that can automate this for you, but it still requires some hands-on manipulation. But image optimization is important because we're taking pictures on our phones now that are beautiful resolution, high quality pictures that we're using on the web. But those images are huge. So they're 5 to 7 megabytes. Well, if you tried to load a 5 to 7 megabyte image on a web page, depending on your connection, it could take a while. That affects your page speed. So you want to make sure that the pictures are resized for whatever the top resolution of your website is. For the most part, a high-res screen is about 2048 pixels. Some bio pictures are about 600 pixels wide. So you want to make sure that they're compressed JPEGs, they're the smallest size that they can be, and both in the size of the file and the size of the image. The other things are sitemaps and robots. So a sitemap is essentially a roadmap for the search engines to go through all of the content that's on your site. So it gets submitted to the search consoles, to Google and Bing, and it helps them to find what you have on your site. Robots does the same thing, but it also tells them what not to look for. You might have a private directory for an employee portal or a customer portal, and you can block that from being crawled in your robots file. Something else that's relatively new is called structured data, and that's important because that just gives snippets of the most important details of your site to the browsers and the search engines. And that's how, if you look at different subparagraphs when there's search results, it helps identify products, events, articles, your website information. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. And then finally, analytics. You got to know what everything is doing, how it's working. You have to make sure that your Google Analytics are integrated, your search consoles. They're free platforms. There are a ton of other ones that are available out there. So just make sure that you have analytics included. So we talked about structured data a second ago. So schema is part of this. If you look on the right, you see all of those meta properties. So that is a way to give the search engine a snapshot, a snippet of what this is. It also helps social media. So for example, if you look down towards the bottom there, you'll see the Twitter cards. It gives you an image, it gives you a summary, even estimated reading time for an article. It tells you when it was published, who the publisher is, what the website name is. So structured data is really important now in SEO because it speeds up that process for search engines to find this information. The other thing is, if you look at search results and you see a star rating, that typically comes from your schema, and it pulls in data from your Google ranking or your Google ratings. It can be a number of other different ratings as well. Second piece of this is off-page optimization. So this is the stuff that that helps build relationships, if you will, with your expert, authoritative, and trustworthy content. So these are other websites or your teammates that link to your website. So getting backlinks is a way for the search engines to find authoritativeness. They're saying, well, if all these other websites are linking to this content, it must be must be trustworthy, relevant, and authoritative. So those backlinks are important. Now, there's good ways and bad ways to get those backlinks. There's what we call white hat SEO and black hat SEO. Black hat SEO is a little evil. it's a little more surreptitious. So that would be an example of a link farm. So somebody wants to sell you a package where they'll get 1,000 backlinks to your website. Well, a lot of times, more times than not, those websites that are backlinking to yours don't have good domain authority. They don't have good page rank. So they're not going to help you. They may not even be relevant. They may be just online lists of links. And Google doesn't like that. You can get punished for those things. So you want to make sure those backlinks are coming from sources that are reliable and relevant to your business. And you also want to make sure that they are coming from sites that do rank better, that have a better domain authority than you do. So what's another great way of doing that? So submitting guest articles to online blogs, news feeds, of course, directory listings, which are very important, your Yelp listing, your BBB listing. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But also another thing is to make sure that those links to your website are correct. If you've changed your domain name, or if you have changed anything about your business, you want to make sure that those links are correct. Another way to build that content is to create shareable assets. So everyone loves a good infographic or a white paper. If you could submit a white paper to an industry or an association website and they can publish it, that's a good backlink. That's a good authoritative backlink. So that content is validated by the other source that's linking to you. So directory listings or citations. The easiest one to start with is your Google business listing. So when you Google, you'll see your Google business listing on the right. And Bing does the same thing. Bing Places for Business. So anybody can get them, sign up for it, make sure the data is there. Your ratings are in there. If your phone number, your hours, during COVID, they used to include whether or not you were serving or delivering or open to the public. Another good directory listing, of course, is your BBB listing. Make sure that that information is updated and current on the BBB website. Of course, social media pages, that's an easy one. Your Facebook page, your LinkedIn page, your Twitter account, make sure that they link to your site too. You may find sometimes if you search something for your company may not show up at the top of the list. It may be a Yelp listing. It may be your BBB listing. It might be your social media pages. So there's more than one way to get to your website, and these other directory listings are crucial. Another thing now is map listings. Make sure that your website is indexed in Apple Maps, Google Maps, Waze, which is, I think, part of Google anyway. But those map listings are important because if somebody's driving, they want to find your location, they're going to say, hey, get me to Acme Guitar Store. And if your map listing is accurate, take people right to your front door. The other piece of that is directory listing management. There are thousands of directories. There's no way that you can get everything listed by yourself in a timely way. So there are platforms and services that will automate this for you. It's a subscription, and they'll list you with what the top aggregators are. There's always a top list of directory sources that feed into hundreds, if not thousands, of these other smaller directories. So there are ways to number one, monitor those listings, make corrections. If you've moved your address, if you've changed your phone number, you changed your hours, you changed your staff. A lot of times a medical practice, a doctor may move from one hospital to another or from one practice to another. You want to make sure that that listing is correct, because otherwise it might lead patients back to the wrong place. So you want to make sure that the directory listing management platforms have all of your latest information. And again, this is something that everybody can do. It's real easy. It's inexpensive. Some of these things are just a couple of $100s a year. So we've done our research. We know what's working. We know what's not. We know what's already on our site. It's optimized. So how do we go forward? Well, let's make sure that our content going forward is in good shape. So we have a clean slate now. We know what we're doing. We know how to move forward. So let's apply the same techniques to the new stuff. First of all, target your audience. know who your audience is. That's so important. If you are servicing, let's say, the restaurant industry, you've got three different targets in that industry. You have your users, you have your influencers, and decision makers. So if you're selling, let's say, kitchen sinks, who are your users? They're going to be the dishwashers, the kitchen staffs, the chefs. Who are the influencers? It could be the managers. They are people that see this stuff working every day. The decision makers can be the owners or the senior managers. And they could all be in different internet circles, maybe different Facebook versus LinkedIn versus Twitter channels. But content delivered to them needs to be targeted to their interest and how they read and interpret it. So you want to make sure that you have your targets down. The other thing is you want to be a thought leader. It's important, again, to build that that expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Content really needs to be original, but it can be curated too. So if you're going to share something, share an article that you've read, let's say about internet security or something, you can always paraphrase it. You can refer to it. And then you can even create backlinks to it, and that can also help share that information. There is a frequency. We tell people, even if it's once a month, that's fine, but just have regular new content on your website, because that tells Google that you're awake and alive. It's not a dead site, so it's active. We all know videos, or people are going to spend more time on site with videos. And so if you can create your own, even on your own iPhone, that's great. It's going to have higher engagement. And again, remember, enhanced visuals. You want to make sure that your images are clear, that they're high resolution, and your graphics are eye-catching, with calls to action where people can request information, request a quote, or even download a white paper.
Greg?
Yeah, we had a few questions roll in.
Great.
During your piece about the business listing sites, two questions, I'll kind of combine them into one. Do you have any recommendations or any insight into management platforms or softwares to monitor directory listings and citation accounts or listings?
Yeah, there are a number out there. The ones that I generally recommend are probably the more popular one is Moz, M-O-Z. It's called Moz Local. They have different packages. It's usually between $200 and $400 a year to subscribe. But I would suggest that you take a look at that. It's moz.com. And again, what you want to do is set it up. It's going to take a little bit of time, so you'll have to monitor it monthly or every couple of months to make sure. So I'd suggest that. Go ahead.
You mentioned Better Business Bureau as being one of the business listing sites to monitor. Were there any other listing sites that you'd recommend?
Well, certainly, yeah. Yelp listings, your Yellow Pages listings, your Super Pages, those are the ones that tend to perform the best in search. But again, they all seem to come from major aggregators. So a listing management service like Moz will help you get listed in those major aggregators, and then that sort of trickles down.
All right, last one from John. Some advertisers offer tracking phone numbers for businesses. How do those tracking numbers affect your SEO since they don't match your primary phone number?
That's a great question. And it just depends on how the ads are deployed. So for the most part, it won't affect SEO because most of the time people aren't really searching for your phone number. But what it can do is, if it's different in a business listing than in your actual listing, that is where you can run into some challenges. If you stop advertising on that platform and that phone number gets recorded in somebody's book, they're going to be calling that number. But it will probably not affect your SEO overall, but there are risks if you stop advertising that phone number doesn't work anymore.
Awesome. That is it. If any other questions pop up, type them in the chat. Otherwise, Greg, proceed.
Okay. All right. Great questions. So let's go back to some thought starters. So we always suggest that people use a blend of branded, industry, and engagement content. So the branded stuff is about you. People want to see behind the scenes. So those articles can be about new hires, anniversaries, new products, new services, specials. That's the stuff that's about you. Then there's the stuff about your industry. So if you're in an industry where you are, or you're in a trade association, for example, and you get information that may not be relevant to the general public, but it's relevant to your customers, again, you can share that information, share insights about new technologies or new practices. And then engagement content. And that can be stuff about events in your area. It can be something related to a parade in the town or something going on at Fells Point or Ravens or anything, because that also can give you some SEO opportunities to reach people that aren't necessarily searching for your business. And I refer to this particularly in social media. So you can hashtag something that's connected to something unrelated to your business that people can then get exposed to your social media page and they'll come to your website. So again, you can create that type of content, blogs, which are now articles, they're not blogs anymore, and newsletters, white papers, infographics, and then you can share that from the website to your other marketing channels. So I always like to suggest to people to use your website as the repository of information and then share from that to get to your other channels. Another thought starter is getting very popular these days. So artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, OpenAI, all of these things are great content sources. You're going to have to maybe not necessarily take it entirely at its word, and please don't ask it to destroy the world. But these are great ways to get outlines for programs or outlines for articles, things like that. So AI is something that's growing, but you really have to be careful to personalize that information. Make sure it's not just referred to generic content. It's something you need to go through, and you can just use it as a thought starter, an outline for your articles. So social media, I'm not going to get into too much of this. I know Gina Ramsey covered it in a program last week that you can probably view on the YouTube channel. But the main thing is to use social media to share that content from your website. Make sure from an SEO perspective, make sure that your profiles are optimized, make sure that your all of your information is correct. Put links back to content on your website so people aren't reading the entire post in social. They're clicking that link, they're coming back to your site and reading more. Those are all important. And also make sure that your social profiles, your social channels are linked in with your analytics as well. That'll give you insight as to how much traffic you might get. You might find out that you don't get a lot of traffic from Google, but you get a lot from LinkedIn or a lot from Facebook. And that's instructive. So that can help you tailor your content to make sure it's appropriate for those channels. Analytics. I'm a big fan of data. They used to say content was king. I think data is king now. So it's important to keep score with the with the analytics that are out there. It really gives an advantage to digital marketing because really everything is trackable. So if you do integrate with traditional marketing, if you do have a billboard or you do have a newspaper ad, when you put a link to your website in there, put a link to a specific page. So if you're doing a radio billboard, for example, on Blue Guitars, go to blueguitars.com/radio. Create that radio page on your website so you'll know that that came from that ad. It's a way to validate the performance of other traditional media things, media activities, but also you can measure and really identify traffic and your audience that comes from that. So we talked about Google and Bing Analytics. They're free, readily available. Search consoles for both. That helps you with the technical and some of the research. The main things to look for, it's going to look for your acquisition. Where are people coming from? Are they coming from search? Are they coming from social? Are they coming from your email? Are they coming from other referral sources? It'll tell you how many users, how many unique visitors. That's important to discern unique visitors from visitors. A unique visitor is a single person with a single visit to the site. It's not somebody that falls asleep on your reload button and reloads a page 1,000 times. So you want to look for unique visitors, sessions, how many times people visited the site, and what their behavior was, and conversions. Did they complete a form? Did they submit a request for a quote? Did they make a purchase? So these analytics in the search consoles will also give you your index coverage. Like we said, are your pages being indexed? What rank are you? Are the links good? Are there broken links? Is it mobile friendly? Is it usable? If you see high traffic to your site from mobile devices, look at that content on a phone. If you've got people in your office that have Samsungs or different types of phones, look at it on all these devices because they have different screen sizes and different resolutions. The other thing is to integrate your analytics with those SEO monitoring and directory listing monitoring sources if you can. Again, that's just another way to keep track and keep score of everything. So Mary just asked a question I just saw in here. Do you recommend using Sprout to post the same post on multiple social sites? There are different platforms that do that. Certainly, you want to make sure that the gist of your content is out there, but again, tailor it to that particular channel. You may not necessarily want to blanket blast the same exact content out, but look to see what's the conversation, what's your voice on Facebook? Is it the same as on LinkedIn? Is it more professional? You may just want to make minor tweaks to change the content in both, but certainly if that's the only tool you have in the toolbox, use it because it gets the content out there. Another question, what changes should we be aware of with the new Google Analytics platform? That's a great question. It's coming in, I think, the end of June of this year. So if you've had a standard Google Analytics account all these years, you're going to see a lot of changes. If you manage your own account, make sure that it gets converted and optimized already for that GA4 platform. In all honesty, I need to see more data on that. I need to see how reporting can be configured. And I'm sure that's going to be another seminar that the BBB might be able to offer in the future. But certainly go to your Google Analytics account, explore it, and make sure that you've got configurations between your existing Google Analytics account and the GA4 account. So that's a great question. Main thing is be patient. As I said, SEO takes time. It takes an investment. It takes research, it takes implementation, analysis, and then repeat, refine. So what to do if you don't have patience or you just want to get up to the top of page 1 tomorrow? The other alternative is search ads. And in many cases, we encourage clients to use a combination of search ads along with SEO. And what that enables us to do is to get those pages to perform higher initially, to get more traffic, and all of those things help the organic SEO. So if your first keyword is blue guitars, if you do a Google ad campaign for blue guitars going to your website, as soon as your blue guitar page increases in paid in your results, then you can back off that ad spend because now it's performing organically. So search ads are a great way to augment a good SEO program. And the other piece of that is it finds the prospects when they're looking for you. If somebody's searching for something, that's the best time to have your content delivered. And if you can't do it organically, you can do it with search ads, video, display, and the ever popular remarketing ads. So if you search for a blue guitar and then all of a sudden every website you go to has a blue guitar ad on it, that is remarketing. It's an incredible tool that many have found beneficial to their business. The other thing is you can look at YouTube's advertising platform. You can create that 5 or 10-second pre-roll ad that appears before somebody else's ad about similar content. It also enables you to create and control your budget. Whereas we've seen clients that spend as little as, let's say, $500 to $1,000 on digital ads versus, I'm not going to take anything away from the radio ads because they're important in the overall marketing package, but it also gives you a chance to get a little bit more specific data and target as well. So it can be more cost effective. It's something you can turn on and off on a daily basis. You're not locked into running for a month or a year at a time. The other thing is you can create that content specific landing page, which is great because then you can make sure that your call to action is there, all the information is there, request for information, and get people to sign up for email lists and things like that. It also enables you to better target your audience geographically, by interest, and by other demographic features. So search ads are another great way to get there faster, but it's also a great way to augment and supplement your SEO program. So there is another question that came in. Do you recommend starting with remarketing ads in the beginning since they may be cheaper? Well, again, there's a couple of different ways to look at Google campaigns, and we are a Google advertiser. That in itself can be its own seminar. Look at smart campaigns as something to start with. That does a combination of some remarketing, some search, and some display ads. Remarketing alone may not necessarily get you the conversion rate. That's why it's less expensive. It may take 10,000 views as opposed to get a conversion, as opposed to someone in search, you might get a much higher conversion rate. So remarketing is a piece of the ad puzzle, but if you're starting out from scratch, look at starting with a Google, just their simple campaigns that give you a piece of all three of them in the same batch, the smart campaigns. Are there recommendations for companies to help with keyword search? Certainly, you can do it yourself. You can hire a professional. There are companies that offer it as part of a package. I don't know that there are any that give it a standalone. They'll offer it as part of an SEO program. But as I said, you can go to Google Keyword Planner if it's something that you want to do yourself. We do SEO as part of a whole the whole package. We'll be happy to help you with it. But you can look at some of the other tools that are out there. There's also a website, I believe it's Ahrefs. It's AHREFS, which is taken from how a link is in code. That's another site that can give you some keyword tools. The other thing to look at is Google Trends. So you can type in a phrase and see what's trending and where. So if you have a national company, it can give you different states where certain phrases are trending. If you're a local company, it'll give you, ranges within your area as well. So take a look at those options. Actually, I think we're coming up on just about what I can summarize in a 1 hour webinar here. So why don't I open it up for any other questions?